Today, we have a special guest who embodies resilience and innovation in face of adversity. Michael Stein, you are the founder of Michael Stein Media. You are a renowned entrepreneur with a diverse portfolio. Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And we're going to talk about Toronto today too, so that'll be fun.
Yes, that's right. I am Canadian. Michael, your journey is marked by creativity and determination. Despite facing some challenges of dyslexia and ADHD, you have turned these into strengths, driving your success in the media industry and beyond. You are also the host of 3 podcasts, Sign Time Show, Longshot Leaders, and Bulletor, which we'll talk about soon, where you delve into lives of successful individuals who have overcome their own obstacles as well. But just to start, can you tell us your journey, which is an interesting one?
Yeah, so I do. It started this Longshot Leaders podcast 3 years ago. I started doing it and said, if I was going to do a podcast, it would be this type because I consider myself a long shot. I consider myself coming in a long line of long shots. My grandmother escaped the Russian concentration camps on our way to America. My dad was a New York homeless street kid, became a multimillionaire with his business up in Canada in the early 70s, only to become homeless again. I was born premature, health issues. They didn't know what ADD was back then, but I was put in a special needs school and I had, a focusing problem. It was a type of dyslexia where the words would jump in front of each other, but it was also, I had to see a specialist for years when I was a kid. Dr. Getz, that's the good thing about growing up in Los Angeles, all kinds of specialists out there. But I really, just was a awkward kid in the hospital when I was younger. I just never had any success of any kind other than making people laugh at myself or, do anything for a laugh. And then things changed when I was like 10 years old. Like most American boys, I saw the movie Rocky. I said, Here's a guy like me. I said, he keeps on getting knocked down and he keeps on getting back up and he tries really hard and he's funny. But the only thing is between this guy and myself is that he was physically fit. So I said, every day since then, I said, I'm going to be just like Rocky. So I started exercising every day. And by the time I was 16, I became a physical fitness trainer while I was in high school. And I said, ooh, you know what? There's, time plus effort. You can be successful. So then I finally said, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. I told my tutor at the time, she goes, what do you want to do when you graduate high school? I said, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, a stand-up comedian, and an actor. And she goes, yeah, you might want to work with your hands because not everybody's meant to do what they want to do. I said, screw you. My dad never finished the 8th grade and became a multimillionaire. Granted, he's living in a van outside, but because my mom was remarried to stepdad and he visited his old house. I said, but I'm going to do this. So a day after I graduated high school, I started a tool company like my dad did after that calculated company in Canada. My dad's old business partner was a guy named Alan Smith who started a company called Harbor Freight, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. And that's after my dad then broke up as partners. He did all that. So I said, I want to do a tool business. So I started a day after I graduated high school and I failed miserably. Summertime, I did 2 sales in an hour. And then I made no sales for like 2 days. And as Top Gun was out and I was like, I want to get out and, I can't be cooped up in here. But I took classes at a city college. I took business, psychology, and acting and theater. And 6 months later, I did stand up and I brought a lot of people there. And this was in 1986 and 86. And I said, people are going to nightclubs a lot, dance clubs, not just for stand-up comedy. I said, I can make money bringing people to clubs, I get the door.
I actually watched one of your, the stand-ups. I think it was called The Jewish Experience. It was funny.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to finish this up real quick. So basically I started promoting clubs, became the number 1 nightclub promoter in my age bracket. And that opened up the doors for me to meet a lot of people. And I was able to become an actor. My first acting role was playing Dirk Diggler in the Dirk Diggler story, which became Boogie Nights, which I appear in as well. Started producing my own stuff, worked with Warner Brothers, doing big promotional events for movies. And then I decided I'm going to become a filmmaker and an actor full time. I dropped my nightclub promotion business and I lost all my money, but I said, I made a film. And that won a lot of awards and it got me an HBO deal and got me close to make a feature film deal. That was a short film, but I just didn't get that movie deal. So after red tape of Hollywood, for 5 years, I said, I'm going to make my own movie, but I got to be an entrepreneur again. So I started a company called Tarps Plus, selling tarps. It was like the one thing out of that tool business that I saw people still needed. And then when I was a younger guy, And that blew up within 6 months. I made enough money to make my own film, and I wrote, directed, produced, and acted in a film called Love Hollywood Style with Faye Dunaway, Andy Dick, Coolio, many other actors you've seen. And that did decent. It didn't make all its money back. But the one thing that was doing really well was that tarp business. So I decided I'm going to nurture this business. And long story short, I later on said, if I was ever to do a podcast, it's about people that go up and down and try to learn this, failure and success journey. And that's why I started the Long Shot Leader podcast, and I continue to grow that business today. I just launched another business called Bolator, which is a branded product. And that's why I'm talking to you here today, I guess.
How do you identify and evaluate new business opportunities in a rapidly changing environment?
Yeah, I methodically. Actually, it's not like, I wish I could be like, I had like, remember Chaplin, the movie Chaplin? It would drive, and the cane just falls into his hand and the hat just rolls on his head. No, when it comes to, you sit down and you methodically think, okay, what's the competition like? What's this like? What's the milieu of the atmosphere right now? What am I good at? What can I achieve at? Can I visualize this being successful? I don't care if it's exciting or boring. First of all, that's what I want to do, but can I do it? Do I have opportunities? So Mike Rowe talks about opportunities and then passions. And you really want to gravitate towards the opportunities. And then if they line up with your passions, great. So I kind of go through a process of like, when it comes down to a business, it's like, what can I solve the pain for that? Can I get a better price than everybody? Can I offer something unique? So I kind of like have an imaginary, automatically, immediately, like a spreadsheet in my mind that'll go over that checklist.
But how does someone start a business without actually having someone to back them up, any funding, no business background? What would you suggest that they do first?
Yeah, I was broken in debt when I started the business I have now. So basically, you look at I'll tell you what I did. I had a couple suppliers that I was able to buy, and they were importing a widget, tarps. So then I said, okay, I'm going to build a website. And how can I build a website? Well, there's ones that are cookie cutter, back then it was Yahoo. And they gave you like X amount of time. As long as you put a credit card down, they gave you X amount of time for free to build your site. You have to pay any money down, but they eventually, start charging you. I said, okay, so now no money there. I actually borrowed a credit card because when I made that short film, I filed bankruptcy because not everybody paid me that said they were going to fund it. That short film that did really well, got bought by HBO. And so I didn't even have a credit card. I had to borrow that from my girlfriend at the time and started building a site. And then I made one sale. It came through the fax machine back then. I was like, ooh, a sale, and then you picked up the product. I delivered it. And then you eventually make 2 sales and 3 sales. And then eventually those get bigger and you start to hold on to your money. You save your liquidity, you live below your means, and you start to build that business. And then that starts to earn inertia. And that's the way I did it.
Does visualization play a role or a part in this with your mindset?
Yeah. So visualization, let's talk about personal development. So when I was a nightclub promoter, and I started wanted to become an actor, I was dating this girl and she was so wonderful. Her dad was friends with Tony Robbins. We broke up and she was so nice. She called me 6 months later. She was like, you're better than this. You know what you should do? You should go and get those Tony Robbins tapes. Tony Robbins, is Anthony Robbins. And I said, the guy with the big teeth, the huge guy. Yeah. She's like, yeah. He's friends with my dad. And so then I get that, I buy that infomercial series of tapes and I do it. And I do the second biggest event I ever done. I did a big event for the Batman movie. And I did this documentary on that history of LA clubs at the Park Plaza Hotel, 4,000 people. I'm like, this works. And then you go with a little bit of failure and it doesn't work. And then you get a little bit more personal development and it works. So the mindset, the biggest thing I tell anybody is get involved in personal development, understand why you do what you do, and why, understand 6 human needs psychology, the triad of your emotions, and all those things that Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins, all those guys, talk about. There's lots to talk about there, but I would just say, look, get involved in personal development. I think that answers your question about as far as mindset is concerned.
Yeah. And do you use personal affirmations as well?
Yeah, there's something called incantations that you can do. There's all kinds of modalities. This great acting teacher named Eric Morris, who's in his 90s now and still teaching on Wilshire Boulevard. He has written like 14 books and some of them are very psychology driven. And he does something called the Superman technique, and Tony Robbins will talk about incantations. And basically it's where you build the crescendo. You count all the accomplishments you've had Because what you say, the triad of emotions is your physiology, your focus, and your words, internal and external. That's going to determine on the decisions you make and how successful you are. You'd be surprised. And now, as far as affirmations and the secret and all that, the secret to the secret was partial of it was when you tell yourself something or you visualize something, it's more apt to happen. There's a lot more to do there. And you want to recognize there's weeds in your garden. I do all that stuff. Not like I'm operating off of nines and tens every single day. I'm not that, that guy, but it's taken me years to really kind of have unconscious competence to where I do use a lot of this in my daily day, life to where I, when times are tough, I automatically have triggers that get me back in the right place to where I can, pivot and perform.
And because you're so immersed in your businesses as well, how do you handle stress and maintain focus during high pressure situations?
Questions. You ask yourself the right questions. If you ask yourself enabling questions, then you're going to come up with things that disable you, but you're asking questions that will enable you, you're going to come up with better answers. So the first thing I do is my internal dialogue. Usually when tragedy strikes, you start talking to yourself, and the questions I ask myself to come up with better answers are key. Okay. Physiology, rather than crestfallen and slumped over, I will take a deep breath, get some oxygen flowing, and try to, really rise myself to say, okay, let's change our emotional state into the recipe that's going to enable me for success. We all know what that is. So basically it's like acting to where, you have to perform a certain way in the scene. Our emotions are a recipe for, so how that emotions are. So your words, your physiology, and your focus, what I'm focusing on. Okay. How can I get out, what am I going to enable me to get to a better situation? Use all those. So every time, it becomes a pattern. So whenever tragedy strikes, you deal with it for the shortest amount of time possible. You have to deal with it. And then you go into your system. That's kind of like what I do.
And what about comedy? Because comedy is a big part of your life. Do you use comedy as an outlet to deal with stress as well?
Just stand up is something I've done off and on since I'm 19 years old. And, right now with business, it takes up a lot of time. So I'm not really doing stand up. I did like a stint, about 5 months ago, but every 4 years, I'll do like a stint if I get the bug. And it's a great way to work out a lot of issues in your head. Being a kid, that's how I started. That was like my survival tool. Tough times, attach a joke to it. That gives me connection with people, the success that I had of self-deprecation, all that. And then when tragedy strikes, like my ex-fiance cheated on me. She was a habitual pot smoker. She cheated on me with a guy named Bud. That's the truth. That really happened. And so I was like, well, I was really heartbroken over that situation. But when you think about that, I'm like, that's a great joke. I like that joke, and then I could use that. And I'm like, well, now we're making lemonade, aren't we? I look at all kinds of tragedy like that. There was a great movie called Mr. Saturday Night where Billy Crystal, his mom dies, and he's a stand-up comedian in that movie. And he does stand up at his mom's funeral. So when my mom died, I knew before she died. I talked to her, said, Mom, can I do that at your funeral? She goes, you could talk about this, but don't talk about that. Don't embarrass me. Right. She was like Don Rickles. She looked like Marilyn Monroe, but she was talking like Don Monroe. So I did stand up at mom's funeral. So, and I didn't have to, it wasn't unpleasurable experience. I dealt with the pain, and then you pivot and you make, you try to see what value you can get out of those situations.
Well, so what role does gratitude play in your life?
Look, everything, people that's the number one, the long shot leaders, the one thing that I've studied the algorithm, people that are successful is gratitude. So like, I cannot think about anything bad happen in my life. I think about the one thing always is that my grandmother, my bedtime story is how she escaped the Russian concentration camps, how I'm lucky to be alive. I was born premature. And my mom would tell me my whole life, she goes, this is my last one. This is the fourth one. I didn't plan on him. I drank, I smoked, I ran up and down the stairs. And I'm like, Mom, they just want to know if you want ranch or blue cheese. You don't have to tell them the whole story. Right. So she would tell everybody that. So my whole life has been with gratitude because I'm not supposed to be here. So, and when you look at that way, it's like every day above ground. I know it's a cliche, is a great day. That's how I feel. So, I got the wind to my back. And I think a lot of people that I interview on Long Shot Leaders feel the same way. It's like they just find a way to have gratitude. And I think it's a really big pusher in the lifeboat of the engine of success.
Yeah, definitely. So my final question to you, how do you balance the pursuit of business goals with personal happiness and well-being?
Well, again, I think, I tell my daughters like a series of things since they were born, and it's like, take care of your body, take care of your mind, be a happy person, be a source of happiness for yourself and others, be a leader, be a force for good. I think that you could take care of your body and mind. And sometimes not the one of these, takes a lead, but I think that it comes with being a happy person first. Really kind of try, understand the triad of your emotions and really what makes you tick. Dad, I'm not a robot. I just can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can. It's just muscle. It's like working out. I'm not asking you to ignore your feelings and the things that hurt you, but don't live there for a long time. And I think that gratitude and being a happy person will enable you to then say, okay, let me take care of my body and my mind, and I think that that's the most important thing, because you can achieve all they want. I think more successful people are happy people as opposed to they're happy because they're successful.
I said it was my last question, but I have, sorry, one more. Say a couple of nice things about the city of Toronto.
Oh God, Toronto is actually like a clean version of New York. Toronto, they have the film festival out there is one of the biggest in the world. They got Bloor Street right over there. That I know I'm saying more than one. They got those Chinese butchers over there in Bloor Street. If they're still out there, it's like the Melrose and Melrose. They got L.A. Bloor Street's like that cool street where they have stores like in fashion, and it's really eclectic, and it's wonderful there. The people there are funny, and just in Canada in general, and there's fashion in Toronto. So there's more than one thing. I was in the pregame. I was telling Jackie that my dad had that calculator business where he sold a lot of calculators, made millions of dollars, and then he lost it all. But it was up in Canada, and we were on Jane and Finch, which is like, a really bad area in Toronto. But
Getting better.
is it getting better? That's
It is.
great. Canadian people, they have a jest of way of saying that the redheaded stepchild of America, but they're really not. It's like, it's just such a great country. And I love Canada as a whole. Vancouver's like the California of Canada on there on the West Coast. And Toronto itself is just it is the New York of Canada,
Oh,
so it's just, I love it.
thank you so much for saying that. Michael Stein, really enjoyed the time with you today.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And now, for yet another facet of happiness, I introduce my second guest, Lisa Victoria. Lisa Victoria, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you, Jackie. And it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, thank you very much for being here as well. Lisa, you are an intuitive coach, and you can explain exactly what that is in a few minutes. An inspirational speaker, a former podcaster, and author of the book Be Happy Now. But you started in the corporate world as an accountant. Can you please take us through your journey?
Absolutely. It has been a journey for sure. And I get asked this a lot, how do you go from being an accountant in the corporate world to being a coach and a speaker and an author? Well, life happened. And at the time, I thought life was happening to me. But what I realized now was life was happening for me. It was waking me up. And it was like, the whole cocoon and the butterfly coming out of being a caterpillar. And very much for me, which I talk about in my book, Be Happy Now, I was going through the week and I felt like my wings were clipped. And I felt very much like that caterpillar. And I was waiting for the weekend to be myself and go out dancing. And then, on a Monday morning, I'd put on that brave face and go back into the corporate world and pretend to be someone who I didn't feel like was me.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was, in a period of about 6 months, I'm a very logical, analytical accountant. And within 6 months, I went from being with my partner to splitting up to moving in with my sister's mother-in-law. I was doing my final accountancy exams at the time. I was also wearing a heart monitor because I was having heart tests. They thought I had an irregular heartbeat. And it felt like every single area of my life was crumbling around me. But what I know now is I was going through that beautiful chrysalis effect. And the defining moment for me was I was driving back down the freeway, as you say in America, or they say at the motorway in the UK. And I put my foot on the brake and my brake line had completely gone and I had no brakes.
Oh,
And
goodness.
all the traffic was stopped in front of me. And I just remember saying, please, somebody help me. And not being particularly religious or not particularly believing in anything, because I was this logical, analytical person.
Hmm.
And as soon as I tried to use what you call a shift stick, or the gear stick, as we call it in the UK, to try and get the car to slow down because I had no brakes, as soon as I looked up again, the traffic had disappeared. And to this day, I can't explain what happened. And therein began my journey to becoming more intuitive, more spiritual, more awake, more a believer of, what
Transformation.
you want to call upstairs. And yeah, it was just a phenomenal journey for me. And one of my friends from college said, why don't you try Reiki? And I was like, what's Reiki? I've never heard of it. Energy healing, that's weird. And that was my transition really from this logical, analytical corporate world to there's something out there, there's something different, there's a different world available to me rather than this stressed being and stressed existence of trying to pass the next exam, trying to perform at work, thinking, oh, I've survived another week, oh, I've survived another exam, and that adrenaline and that cortisol running through my body. And then over the last 15 years of my life, my journey's just continued to unfold to the idea for my book, which I'd never set out to write a book. The idea came to me. I'd say not from me, it came through me. And just more this, when we talk about what is intuitive coaching, it comes from my heart voice. I call my business heart voice because everything comes from here, from my center, from my soul. And I always say it more comes through me. And sometimes even when I'm coaching, I'm hearing words for the first time as well. So I get a double whammy because I get coached at the same time too, which is beautiful. It's just worlds apart to where I was before. So if any of your listeners out there are struggling and feeling stuck or feeling like life isn't working out for them, don't worry, because it's always working out for you. It's just sometimes when we're in it, we can't see it. But sometimes we have to trust and surrender and obviously work with good people like yourself or other amazing people out there to help guide us on our journey to know that we're okay and we're always going to be okay.
Agreed. And some of our listeners are still in the corporate world. How do you overcome confidence issues surrounded by corporate professionals? Where do people start in order to figure out what they truly want their future to look like?
That's a great question. So I'd say to any of your listeners, don't make any rash decisions. I'd say do the inner work first and the outer world will change. And that's exactly what happened for me. I realized that I had this imposter syndrome and very low confidence, very low self-esteem. You know, even though I was a qualified accountant, I still didn't feel good enough. I still felt on a Sunday night, those heart palpitations of, what am I going to walk into tomorrow? You know, what if my boss asks me to do something that I can't do? And, you know, for 10 years in my corporate world life, I'd always had a fully meets or an exceeds on my appraisals, end of year appraisals. I still had that voice in my head, which a lot of your listeners will relate to, that's it's me. Everyone else is amazing, but it's me. I'm not qualified enough compared to them. And that comparison game. And, you know, whilst I was in the corporate world, before I knew about the coaching, I had this voice in my head, that internal dialogue. And it's based on society, you know, it's based on from when I was a little girl and I put my hand up at school and I got the answer wrong. And then that voice remembers that and it says, don't ever put your hand up again, because if you get it wrong, people will laugh at you. So that's a fear of failure. And that becomes the imposter version of ourselves. And I almost say it's like another person, and I call it like an actor's script. So in that moment, I've forgotten who Lisa is and I've started acting out a character who I would never choose to be like. And I'm reading from that actor's script. I'm pretending to be a character in a movie that I didn't even audition for. And that's the imposter version of life. And so I had this in the corporate world for many years. And I just felt like I was getting through. And then when I did the coaching, I realized that actually the imposter isn't me. The imposter is just a sum of all my life's events that had been filed away into this version of this script that I'd been reading from that says on page 995, in this situation, you should react like this, or when you have an exam, you should feel stressed. So of course, if I'm thinking that, I then feel that stress. And I have this illusion of choice that if I've got a stressful exam coming up, I can't choose anything other than stress. And that's when my coach flipped it all on its head and said, no. We're only ever one thought away from a good feeling. How we choose to think and feel about that exam will affect our inner world. And when we change our inner world, our outer world changes. So that was the first step that I did, was I started looking at my inner world and my response to my external events. What was I thinking and feeling about these external events? And would I really choose that? Would I really choose to feel stressed if I could choose? No, I'd choose to feel calm and think, well, I'm doing my best.
Right.
And how I'd speak to my best friend, I'd be like, I'm doing my best. I've studied, I can do no more. I've done a great job. blah, blah, blah. That's how I would speak to my best friend. But the internal dialogue was, you should be really stressed. You should be worried if you fail this exam. You're going to look at an idiot if all your colleagues pass and you don't. And it's like, well, which voice would I speak to from my best friend? The one that I call lives rent-free in our head, or the one that I'd speak to my best friend, which I call the heart voice, which is why my business is called the Heart Voice. And when I learned this, I was able to drive my emotional vehicle in the corporate world. So for any of your listeners out there who are in the corporate world, the biggest piece of advice I could give them is start by becoming your own best friend. Whether it's you're opening an email or whether you've got a meeting and you're scared to speak up in a meeting, just say, what would you say to your best friend? You'd say, you know enough, have your voice in that meeting. Just say what you know, because you can't get being you wrong.
Exactly. And so how do you slow down too and start noticing opportunities?
So really, really just taking that step back, like you say, slow down, because that version of that actor's script wants to go, 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 do, achieve, achieve. And it's always moving the goalpost. It's on to the next thing. Seldom does it say, hey, just sit for 10 minutes and celebrate your success. So some really good tools for your listeners is journaling. And I know certainly when I started this process, that version of that imposter syndrome, who I call hard time Henrietta or anxious Annie or little Miss Worry Pants, she's not me. She's just another character that I'd practice playing. She'll say, you haven't got time to journal.
Yes.
You're too busy. Get the washing done. And it's like, there's this saying, if you can't find an hour to meditate or something, you need to make sure you've got 3. What's so beautiful about, we all have the same amount of hours in the day. It's just how we choose to spend it. It's like a budget, right? Just like we have with our money and our finances, we have a certain amount and we choose how we spend that money. We have the same opportunity with time. But I know things like scrolling on the internet become addictive and we get dopamine hit. But I'd really just challenge your listeners to just audit their time and go, where is there an opportunity to get even 5 minutes back in my day that I can just sit and I can journal, or I can just write down 5 things that I did well today that I'm proud of. And it could be something like, paying for someone's groceries, and it might have only been like a couple of dollars, but they were in front of you in the queue and it wasn't a lot and you're paying it, and it's a nice thing to do. Or giving someone a compliment, or helping a colleague with some work that they were really struggling with and you took some time out. So it doesn't have to be a financial cost. It could just be an investment of your time. So really start to harness your own best friend, your relationship with yourself. And you can do that through journaling. You can do that through a brag book. You can do that through a meditation walk. Just by taking 5 minutes to step outside and just look up at the trees, look up at the sky, and just notice, look how powerful and strong that tree is and the tree roots. What does that signify about me and my life and all the challenges that I've overcome? And just by, like you say, slowing down, we access wisdom. We access our own wisdom. And that's when we can start creating the change from the inside out.
So you're saying doing the inner work first, journaling helps you to work towards your dreams as well.
Yes, absolutely. Because often, who I call hard time Henrietta or little Miss Worry Pants, she'll say, people like us don't do that. We can't do that. We're not good enough. We came from this background, so we can't possibly think of dreaming or even attempting to become that person. And it's like, I think it was Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. I can't remember. I want to credit the person that said that. If you can dream it, you can do it. And the only thing that's stopping you isn't you. It's that pre-programming from society that says people like us can't. Or, blondes are dumb. I got that programming that blondes are dumb. Or, I don't have enough money, or it's too expensive, or whatever those beliefs and thoughts are. It's just challenge it. Just ask yourself that question. Is it really true? And what's the worst that can happen? Like Thomas Edison, who created the light bulb, I think it was like 1,000 attempts before he did it. And everyone thought he was mad. And it's like, no, it was just a first attempt in learning. It's never a fail. It's just a first attempt in learning. So I'd encourage your listeners to just listen to their heart voice, listen to that passion, listen to that whisper, that calling within them, and just say, hey, how can I try? how can I try? And if I fall forwards, great, I pick myself back up. It's just a first attempt in learning. We are so amazingly capable, more than we can ever believe, when we just take a step in the right direction and we listen to this rather than this, which is the head voice that says we can't. And we listen to our heart that would encourage our best friend.
Yeah, you're right. We get too much in our head sometimes, and that gets in the way. You talked about journaling. I have to go to the law of attraction because that's what this reminds me of. So how does the law of attraction work, and how can we start connecting with it to create our future?
Wow, such a great question. Wow. I could talk for hours about this. And I've just got back from a Dr. Joe Dispenza event here in Barcelona. I'm in Europe. And he talks about the scientific evidence behind this. And that's why I love following Dr. Joe so much, is because he scientifically proves the energetic vibration behind the law of attraction. So again, with my accountancy brain on all those years ago, I thought it was woo-woo. I thought, oh, that old nonsense. But actually, now I know that it's grounded in science, and we have an energetic field around us, and we're vibrating. And what our vibration puts out there, we attract back energetically. And I'm sure all your listeners can resonate with this. The amount of times that we've thought of someone and then they rang, they've sent a message. And you're like, I was just thinking about you.
Right.
And that's how energy works, because when you think about quantum physics, and again, Dr. Joe explains this like really well, it blows my mind, quantum physics, that we're all just one. We're all just like basically nothingness, just energetic particles. And quantum physics shows that we are just energetic beings, and that based on our thoughts, we create a chemical reaction in our body. So if we're thinking a stressful thought, we create a stressful reaction in our body, which increases our cortisol and it shrinks our energetic field. And whereas if we're feeling positive and joyful and in flow and in expectancy and curiosity and magic, our energetic field expands. And then that's when what he says is that the thought, sends a signal out, and the feeling attracts the thing back. So what we want to be doing is not just thinking it, we want to be feeling it as well, as if we've already got it or as if it's already happened. So the thought sends a signal out and the feeling attracts the thing back. So
And
again,
the power of the spoken word as well. It's so important, right? What you
massively bringing it into being, and the language around that. It's like, I want is very kind of like needy, whereas I deserve. So even the power of the language around it, or I'm excited for when this thing happens, rather than I wish this would happen. It's the energetic vibration around it. And like you say, bring it into existence by speaking it out there.
Yeah. So how do you start to create a vision for your future and having the confidence to move from your comfort zone and into the magic zone?
I love that. It's about just being playful and curious, like children do. We make believe as children. And I just say it's not being childish, it's being more childlike. A child will say, watch me, watch me. Do you want to hear me sing? Do you want to listen to my show that I've just created in my head? And then they start dancing around, and, they create. And all that children have done is they've remembered what we have forgotten. That's all that's happened. And our job is to remember what they remember. So if anyone's struggling, just look at a child. Remember what it felt like to be a child. Remember what it felt like to daydream. And just start with that, and just be curious, and don't attach the outcome to the dream. So it's not that you have to have it to feel good. You're just dreaming about it. And if it happens, great. But if it doesn't, you've already dreamt about it, which feels good, which is the child. When I'm older, I want to be a dancer. They're enjoying being a dancer right here, right now, and they're dancing around. They don't think, oh, God, what if I can't be a dancer? And, oh, I can't enjoy that feeling in advance. They're just like, watch me. I'm going to be on stage, and, oh, I'm going to live my best life. And they're already feeling as if it's happened. So I just say to your listeners, just don't feel silly for creating a vision board. But don't attach your happiness to it. Don't say, I have to get that car, I have to get that house, or I have to change my career to be happy. It's like, I aim for those things. And if they happen, great. But if they don't, I'm going to enjoy the journey, because there might be twists and turns and I might end up going down this route, which is even better. So it's about not making the journey wrong and not attaching it to it. I love the saying, it's that or better.
Right.
So it's that house or better, it's that car or better, it's that career or better. And it's like when you can create that or better, it takes the pressure off achieving or having that one thing. Because it means that if that's not coming, like I've been manifesting a house recently, and the house that I was, meditating on and visualizing being in, it's already sold. And I'm like, great, something better's coming. Thank you, universe, for something better. Thank you, universe, for not gifting me that house, because I know you've got a better plan for me and I trust you. And I'm excited to see what better is coming, rather than that version of Hard Time Henrietta that we've been programmed to go, oh, that's disappointing. I really thought I was going to get that house and that didn't happen. The law of attraction doesn't work. This isn't working. It must be my vibration. It's like, no, 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 no. It's never going wrong. It's just something better's coming.
That is so true. So your book, Be Happy Now, is about learning to trust that the joy of life is in the journey, not just seeing the destination, as you said. It's about connecting you with your soul and passion, trusting in divine guidance, and not trying everything, and just be happy now. But can we just be happy now?
Everything is just a thought. We're only ever one thought away from a good feeling. And I love the book by Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Now, he was a prisoner of war. It's a massive inspiration to me that proves that you can be happy now, because he said, you can beat me, you can torture me, you can lock me up, you control the food that you give me. But the one thing you cannot do is control my thoughts and my feelings. And when he was a prisoner of war, he actually visualized being out and marrying his dream partner and cooking in the kitchen and being with her. That's where I know that it's humanly possible to be happy now, regardless of our external circumstances, because there's people like Viktor Frankl, like Nelson Mandela. There's amazing human form people out there who have been in adverse situations and they've still had the strength of character to be happy in the moment and to reframe the stories. So for me, one of the reasons why I wrote the book Be Happy Now is because I always felt like my life was like that clown's hat, where you go to pick up the hat and the clown's shoe is so big that it kicks the hat away. And it's like, you're nearly there, you're nearly there. Just get your qualifications, then you can be happy. Oh, just get your partner, then you can be happy. Or just get your house, oh, then you can be happy. Or just pay your mortgage off, then you can be happy. And it's almost like you're always nearly there to be able to be happy. And that's the illusion that the mind creates. And it's really cruel, because I was always chasing something to then be happy. But as soon as I reached that destination, the goalpost moved just slightly. So then it was like the next thing. So for me, being happy now is about going within and reframing the stories and writing down what opportunities, even if I'm in a situation right now that I perhaps wouldn't choose, what are the opportunities here? What can I be happy about? I'm in between houses right now. My house is rented out and I'm looking at buying a new one, as I've just shared with you. So I'm actually living with my parents at the minute out of a suitcase and then going to my friends. So in an ideal world, I could say, well, I'm 42 and I haven't got anything to be happy about, because I should, as society says, be living in my own house. I shouldn't be living with my parents. I shouldn't be living out of a suitcase. And it's like, well, what's the gift in this, that I can be happy now? I get to spend more time with my parents. I get to travel and not have, to be in one place right now and cut the grass and look after the cleaning of my house. I get to enjoy these other things. And that's why I deserve to be happy now, and not when I've sorted the house situation out. So that's a real life example of, it's only ever a thought and a feeling, and we get to shift our focus. And there's a saying, where our focus goes, our energy flows.
Right.
So I can either focus on Hard Time Henrietta's view of the house, which is, you should have a house now, you're 42. I can't believe you're still living with your parents. Or I can listen to my heart voice that says, how beautiful is this that I get to spend more time with my parents? It's precious. How beautiful is it that I've got a blank canvas? How exciting is it that I don't know which house I'm going to be living in, and I get to find that house and I get to love that house? Two very different stories.
Right.
My internal state is not as a result of what society would say my external state looks like right now.
Exactly. So what is one final thought about happiness you can share with our listeners today?
So really, it sounds simple, but happiness is an inside job. Most of my life, I'd been trying to fix everything external to feel happy on the inside. I thought if I got the right partner, if I got the right job, if I sorted my house out, if I sorted my exams out and I got qualified, then I could be happy. But I really, value that happiness is an inside job. We create it, because when something external happens, all that happens is we release an internal feeling. We have a treasure chest in here. We've just got very good at practicing releasing stress, worry, fear, doubt, loneliness, sadness. Every single feeling we have, we own in here, but we also have access to that treasure chest, which is happiness, joy, peace, contentment, patience. They're all in here, love. And it's all about, well, how can I release that feeling in the moment? I just need to change the thought in that moment as to what I'm thinking. And it's like picking up that virtual remote control and just saying, what different thought do I have access to that would release a different feeling? Because every single feeling we want, we have inside of us, but nobody had ever taught me how to release it. So when I say happiness is an inside job, I genuinely know that the feelings only ever come from within. They're just released by a thought. So the minute we can start to be quiet and master our thoughts, then we can master our feelings as well. And that's when we get to live a life full of peace, contentment, the law of attraction. We get to really start amp up the quality of our life without needing to change anything in the external world.
Yeah. Wow, that was beautiful, Lisa. Thank you very much. Lisa, where can our listeners find you? And I also believe that you have something to offer our listeners today as well.
I do. So your listeners can head over to heartvoice.co.uk. So that's heart as in the heart, HEART, voice, VOICE.co.uk. And basically what I'm offering your listeners is if they go to my website and they reach out to me, I will do a free exploratory call with them and do an audit of their life and see where they are and see what's blocking them, just to give them some direction to see if they're stuck and they've got a vision for a career or a relationship, how we can start that momentum going. So that's my gift to your listeners today, is that audit on their life.
Thank you very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm so excited for all of your podcast episodes. You literally are bringing happiness and joy to everyone's life. So thank you for creating this wonderful podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Different Facets of Happiness.